So is this good, or should I do something different here?
It's going to touch the got it thing here.
Okay.
No, it didn't work.
Hey, no,
There we go.
There we go. Yeah. Yeah. So is it actually being broadcast now to a broader audience, Scott?
Yes.
It is, huh? Okay. So,
Participants.
okay, welcome to all you out there in Radio Land. I hope you can see and hear me well. But anyway, I was saying that I've done this tour quite a number of times, and this is sort of a compilation of tours that I did, even included a number of pictures of my most recent tour that included Katie and Ed Bolt. And Ed graciously let me use a bunch of his pictures, and I gave him credit where you'll see his name and then his initials, that sort of thing. So if I gave you the credit for one that you did not do, let me know. So, all right. I don't think that's going to be a problem. This thing is very sensitive, sorry. So yeah, what we do in California is fly into San Francisco. That's one of the tours I lead. Another tour, I fly into LA, a bit different. This is more the San Francisco, Central California tour. And we bird then in the mountains, valley, coast, and a little bit in the desert. That is more on my, my Southern California tour. So I included this picture just to show within those little blue circles is the area where we're kind of concentrating. On the most recent tour that I did, it's the top two circles, the one that is close to San Francisco and then the one that circles around Yosemite. So those are the areas. And by the way, anybody could do this tour kind of based on what you see here. So if somebody says, wow, I'd really like to see that bird, where do I go to see it? If you kind of follow what we did here on this tour, and I'll give you some hints exactly where we are, so you could do that. And then I'm also very willing to share that information with people. Frankly, I'm getting out of the touring business. I'm not so young anymore. I guess I could say I'm getting old. And because of that, I'm thinking, well, maybe I should do as many tours as I've done. And so people say, hey, I'd like to do that tour. Ask me and I'll share that information with you. Another kind of a subtitle for this would be that we're also searching for endemic and near endemic birds of California. California has a number of those. Endemic, of course, is a population that occurs in a certain area. And so endemic in California would be within the state of California. There's not a lot of those. There's only 4 of those. But there are more of the near endemics. And those are mostly birds that breed in California, but then bleed over into maybe Oregon, Nevada, some into Mexico. And I'll show you a few of those here in just a sec. So for example, if you look at the yellow-billed magpie, which is a really dandy bird to find, somewhat difficult to find, and I'll tell you the reason for that later, notice that it's totally within the borders of California. So it's found throughout the Central Valley. That would be this part here, but then it's also found in some of the coastal valleys here. Another totally endemic bird is a bird called the island scrub jay, and that bird is endemic to an island called Santa Cruz Island off the coast of, roughly off the coast of Ventura, and Santa Barbara. In order to see that bird, and I do that on my Southern California tour, you have to take a boat. And Santa Cruz Island is half a national park and half owned by the Nature Conservancy. So there is a boat that goes there every day. It makes 2 stops on the island, drops people off. A lot of campers go there, and a lot of birders go there to see that bird. Lawrence's goldfinch, notice that that one, and we're cheating a little bit because that one goes a little bit into Mexico and it does some wandering into Arizona in the winter. But I'm calling it an endemic because most of its population is within California on a regular basis. And the bird becomes very rare outside of California. And then the tricolored blackbird, more information on this bird later too, but notice that's an endemic, but it goes a little bit into Oregon here. There's a small population that extends across the border into Oregon. So we'll kind of mention that as we go, these endemic and near endemics. Some pictures to flesh that out a little bit. This is the first Ed Bolt picture here. We really searched long and hard for this bird, and that was just a few weeks ago. And sort of at the last moment, drew him out of the bushes, so to speak. I think Katie might have been the first one to spot this thing, flew up on a fence. She and I spotted it about the same time. It was quite distant, so we didn't get great pictures, but what a dandy bird. It's big, 18 inches long, bright yellow bill. It's got a yellow pattern around its eye. And we found, I think it was 11 of them under a tree or something like that. The island scrub jay is a dandy, used to be called simply scrub jay, but we'll talk about the split that has occurred with that bird as we go. That's the bird you only find on Santa Cruz Island. Lawrence's goldfinch, we had a plethora of them this year. Sometimes we find one or two. This year there was a spot we found where there were some number of them, which was really nice. And then the tricolored blackbird, which many of you would like, whoops, excuse me. Many of you would like to say, well, that's a red-winged blackbird, but it's not. Anybody tell me what's the difference?
Beige stripe.
Yeah, the stripe on it here is more white than yellow, and it's got a bit of a smaller beak. And this bird shows up in enormous quantities, at least in the past it did. And we'll talk again a little more about that later. So those are the endemic birds. So as we begin this tour, we fly into San Francisco, and 20 miles south of the airport is an area called the San Francisco Bay Lands National Wildlife Refuge. And you can see just really interesting diversity here. The white pelicans stand out. They're sort of cooperatively fishing there. Got a willet here, oops, hit the wrong button every time. Hit the willet here in the foreground. Got some California gulls on the island, some ducks roosting here. I think these were shovelers out here. Got avocet flying. There's both I think my snow egret got chopped off, but there's as you can see here, a great egret, and this is a snow egret. So a place of rather interesting diversity. Mixed flock of, we scared up a mixed flock of avocets, and there's some willets in there. I think there's probably even a marble godwit or two in that flock, which is really cool there. Birds number in the thousands in that area. One of my favorite birds, but I'm always left when I think of this bird. How does he preen his chin?
Maybe it unscrews.
I thought Ed would come up with something, but of course he must use his feet, right? But think of that. It's bill. That's about as low as he could get in his neck right there, using his bill. But for any of you who haven't seen that bird, it's a very handsome bird. Stands about 18 or so inches tall. Sticks out very clearly, head above lots of others, and of course that bill makes him pretty special.
And what is it?
And that, pardon me?
What is it?
Oh, did I not say?
Did not say.
I think it, oh, you know what? Okay, that's a long-billed curlew. Did it get chopped off because I put their names on here? But anyway, all right, long-billed curlew. Okay, sorry, I neglected. So leaving the Bay Area, we get into the mountains pretty quickly, just a couple-hour drive across the Central Valley, San Joaquin Valley. And the place where we get into the mountains is in Yosemite area. And we stay in a little town called Mariposa. Cute, quaint little Western kind of town. As many national park towns, it's, very touristy, but it's also very, very nice. So Yosemite, which for those of you who are there, you understand the beauty of Yosemite. And for those of you who are not, get there, right? Soon. Because the crowds are building. This year was the first year that I needed a reservation to get into this park. And that has never happened before. And I think it probably had something to do with COVID as well, because people sort of were coming out of the woodwork this year just to get a little traveling in. But wow, what a stunning place. This was taken from Glacier Point. Glacier Point is about 3,000 feet above the valley. The valley is, I think, just around 4,000 feet, and Glacier Point is 72 or something like that. So it's a pretty big drop. So a lot of birding around Yosemite. Anybody know about El Capitan, but they call El Cap? Have you seen the movie Free Solo? If you haven't seen the movie Free Solo, see the movie Free Solo. Do that before you even go to Yosemite. I mean, yeah. So anyway, people climb that. That's a 3,000-foot vertical climb. They bivouac overnight. In fact, when we are here, we stop. There's a parking lot down here where you can look up, and we see people climbing it. This year, we saw people getting ready to bivouac overnight. They were up on a little ledge, believe it or not. There are some ledges out there on that face. And they were setting up a sleeping platform, and we could see them. There are little specks up there that you have to look at through your binoculars. So one kick I get out of being here is if you go into the valley, and especially if you get near to this wall, this granite wall, there's a camping area, and you'll see bumper stickers on cars. And the bumper stickers say, "My best vacation is your worst nightmare." That's true for most people, right? So those are hardcore climbers that are going to tackle that peak. And there's a lot of them. There's a lot of crazy people, So anyway, one thing that is somewhat concerning always going to Yosemite is it's frequently an area where there are fires. And there were fires in California this year, but we were not bothered by any of them. They were further north than where we were. This is looking out of my motel window in 2019, and there's a fire just over that hill. So we could not get into the park using the normal road. We had to go way around, and it added a lot of traveling to our days. And that fire burned all the while we were there. So the worst part maybe about the fire is this. Look at the difference in those two pictures. They're really taken from the same point. The one, of course, has no people. The other has a few people on it. But look at the clarity thing, right? So 2019, with that fire burning just outside the park, that's what you saw when you looked at the valley from this is called the tunnel view area. But this year, look at the difference. Here, you can't even see this structure right there. Right there is called Half Dome. So here you can't even see to Half Dome. So quite a change when there's a lot of smoke around. One thing about Yosemite is trees. Trees are magnificent in Yosemite. Somebody in this room is probably embarrassed because I'm using her picture. But anyway, I won't tell you who it is. By the way, this is, oops, there again. Good job, Bill. This is actually Noreen and Jim Shea here. I was thinking they were going to be here tonight, but they're not. There's trees like this all over the place. This, by the way, is a Jeffrey pine, huge, huge Jeffrey pine. And frankly, that one is even small when you compare it to these guys. This is taken in the Mariposa Grove of giant sequoias. And that tree, called the grizzly giant, as you see, is 210 feet tall. It's estimated to be about 3,100 years old. And you can see that it's burned there a couple times. But one thing about these trees is the bark is so thick that fire generally does not get into the actual trunk of the tree, to the wood. So one of the neat little birds, and what a contrast it is, that here you are birding in this place of magnificently big trees, and then here you end up with this little guy. This is one of Ed's pictures. And the next one that I'm going to show you, Ed, I don't like to put you in the back row here, but that one, look at that one. That was Pat Bizzani, who was also with me with these guys. But listen to the song of this bird. A lot of people say it's the most complicated bird song anywhere. You can hear it pretty well? Okay, yeah. It's just such a varied song, pitch-wise. If you see it on a sonogram, holy cow, you know, it's all over the place. But it's really a nifty little bird. And what's nice about this bird is he makes himself pretty obvious. And this little guy was singing away on the same stump where Ed's picture was, just a little closer up, and singing away that song. Now, what's interesting, particularly interesting about this little bird is that it used to be part of the complex of winter wrens, right? And winter wrens occurred in Europe, North America, Eastern and Northern North America, and on the West Coast. And some years ago, I think I am forgetting the year, wasn't long ago. It was 2010. I jump around here a little bit. Yeah. In 2010, they split that species. So they split it into Pacific wren, winter wren. In this part of the country, we see winter wrens, and in Europe is a different winter wren. But so it's one of those birds that actually, if you have a life list, like many birders like to do, this is called an armchair lifer. You get it? Yeah. Because you get this bird in your armchair when you read about it, right? So, so anyway, it's kind of a nifty little bird to find. And in the contrast of the immensity of that forest, and then you get this little tiny singer, you know. Mountain chickadees are common. White-headed woodpecker is often common. This year we had a hard time finding it, but we did. And this guy, sooty grouse, again, one of these birds that was split. This used to be considered a blue grouse, and it was split into two species, the sooty grouse of the West Coast and the dusky grouse of the Rocky Mountains. And it's a big grouse. When you see that bird, you think, whoa, that's a grouse. The thing's about that long. It looks like a size of a female pheasant, really. Funny story about this bird. The first one I found in this area, I was on a scouting trip with two of my friends. I often scout an area before I go, and this was a long time ago. And one of the men with me we were all standing outside our car. One of the men got a phone call, and he's standing there talking on his phone. And the other friend, myself, we're just sort of looking around, see what's around. And all of a sudden, this guy goes, he's talking on his phone to his wife. He's going like this. And finally, we turn around, and here's this bird like 6 feet from us. And it was really interesting. He saw it because he was looking in the right direction. We did not see it. But the bird was there, probably eating the berries that you can see that are growing in the bushes there. So it was kind of a fun bird to find. Steller's jay, common woodland bird. It's a bird that the call is so obvious. Shuck, shuck, shuck. You hear shuck, shuck, shuck. It's and that's a common raven, as it says. Now, look at the color on that bird, right? Isn't that interesting? But listen to this. How do you tell the difference between a raven and a crow? A lot of people have trouble with that, especially when they're flying away. You know, of course, people say, well, ravens, they go croak, right? Croak the raven nevermore, right? And crows, what do they do? Caw, right? But here's a good way. A crow is a bird with a beak, okay? The raven is a beak with a bird. Right? And you you can see it on that picture, right? Look at the size of the beak on that thing. And plus it's got a big curve on it. So anyway, it's a fun bird. I love ravens. This is a picture I borrowed from eBird, but I had to borrow it this year because it was a lifer for me this year. And I've heard the bird umpteen times, but never been able to find it. Found it this year running down the path in front of us. So it was pretty exciting. So moving back now to the west, we come out of the mountains and we're in the San Joaquin Valley, and just a stunning place really in terms of the life that is there and used to be there. It's estimated that somewhere of upward of 500,000. So you, okay, I'm sorry, I thought somebody was having trouble back there. Upward of 500,000 of these birds winter in the Central Valley in California, along with snow geese and Ross's geese. Really an interesting spot to visit. So the place that I'd like to concentrate on is this Merced National Wildlife Refuge right here. And a lot of birds that are not common here are pretty common there. This is a white-faced ibis. It's immature, so it doesn't show the white face. Long-billed dowitchers, lots of them. And here's one of these guys practicing his preening moves. Look at that. The lowest he can get is right there. So long-billed dowitchers. The Western Grebe complex. This again has been a split. The Western Grebe, the one pictured upper left, notice he has the eye in the black, and the Clark's Grebe has the eye in the white. And it was, I think, 1985, they determined that these were two different species. They have different behavior and different appearances. This in general is, the Clark's Grebe in general is a much lighter colored bird. One of the places as we approach the coast that I'd like to go is to the Pinnacles National Park. This picture doesn't give you any representation of the vastness of this place. There could be, right now, I kid you not, when that picture was taken, there could be a condor sitting on any one of these peaks. This was a release point for the California condor, but you would not see them. You'd only see them as fly specks if you got your binoculars on them. It's a very vast area. It's probably the newest national park. I think it's only been in existence since about 2015 or 16. It's a fun place to visit. Tom, I think that's you there, isn't it? Yeah, look at that. Gary, is that Gary Decker? Yeah. Nice hiking trails. One of the birds we look for there is called the Bell's Sparrow. And again, I hope I'm not boring you with these splits, but the Bell's Sparrow was a split fairly recently from the Sage Sparrow. Now there's two. The Bell's Sparrow is the western one, and now the Sagebrush Sparrow is the more eastern one. So a lot of people want to see that bird because if you haven't been to California, you probably or the West Coast, you probably have not seen it. The oak titmouse, again, a split. Anybody remember what the name of that bird was? Yeah, I know Steve. Yeah, Steve would know, but anyway. But yeah, that's the plain titmouse. And notice he doesn't have any of that rufous that our titmice have on it. And this bird actually flew into our van. He hopped around on the cowl. There was probably some food there, jumped out on the, you can see this is the door of the car, and I was able to get a picture. So the oak titmouse, now there are what? Tufted, black crested, the oak titmouse, all in the United States. They were once one species, considered one species. Oh, juniper, forgot juniper. Thank you. Yeah. Juniper titmouse is from the Southwest. Yeah. So back to these magpies. You know, interestingly, I don't know if you know this story, but when the bald eagle was considered for the U.S. emblem and the national bird, Ben Franklin was against it. And the reason he was against it is he said it's a bird of slovenly habits because it eats carrion, right? And he wanted the turkey, by the way. Well, this is a bird of slovenly habits. That's a dead fawn lying on the road, and it's going to make a meal. Those two birds, and there was another one nearby, are going to make a meal out of that. And that's the way you see these birds more often than not, is feeding on roadkill on the side of the road. But going back to that a minute, in 2015, that bird was really hard, still is hard to find, but that bird was really hard to find for a while because West Nile just took the population right down. And now it's coming back, so they're a little easier to find nowadays. So another of the endemics, the tricolor blackbird, Ed took this picture right on a fence by Moonglow Dairy. And this bird once numbered in the millions in the Central Valley of California. The Central Valley up against the coast, you know, in the millions. And I wrote down the numbers here, and by I think I wrote down the numbers. Yes, 1930 population was in the millions. 2008, 400,000. Today, 145,000. It's getting hard to find this bird. And mostly because of the timing of the agricultural pattern in the Central Valley. Farmers are mowing down their nests because they want feed earlier than what they used to get it. Fun little Western woodpecker, the Nuttall's woodpecker. This is a female. Some people might say, well, it looks a little bit like ladderback woodpecker, and that's true. But in this woodpecker here, this black band is much thicker than the ladderback woodpecker. One of my friends from the coast, can you read the sign? Bait and fish cutting only. This guy obviously does not read. The coast is great because you've got these beautiful gulls like the western gull, Herman's gull, the gull and friend here. The western gulls have gotten the idea that if you follow a sea otter, as that sea otter eats, chips are going to fall off of what he's eating, and the gull is going to take advantage of that. Sometimes the diversity along the coast is just mind-boggling. Probably about 2/3 of these birds are marbled godwits, and about 1/3 of them are willets. So here's like a couple of willets. They have that grayer appearance. The marbled godwits, they are the ones with the bicolored bill. Like here's a good one right here to see. And they're taller than the willets. The upturned bill, typical of godwits. So the willets of the West Coast are still willets, but I'm thinking that they are going to be split and become a species by themselves called the Western willet. there's enough difference that that is looking like that's going to happen sometime in the future. Whimbrels along the shore. Whimbrels are another curlew, so they have that D-curved beak rather than the up-curved beak of the Godwits. A couple of great places to look for what we call rock pipers, and that's rock sandpipers that hang around rocky coasts, black oyster catcher, black turnstone, two nifty birds. Well, here again, I'm going to embarrass a few people, I think, but I think Tom and Amy are both in there, and you probably recognize more of these people. This is Candy Elkroth here. These were also on my tour, but those folks are from Petoskey area. This is Gary, he belongs to our club. So you go out on a pelagic trip and you hope for the best. Now, the best lately is not great, but I include this slide because this is a pelagic trip from about 2008. And this was a Deb Shearwater trip. And back in those days, you could chum the birds close to the boat. So in other words, this gal, her name is Linda Terrell here. She is standing here cutting up pieces of fish, mixing it in a big tub along with marshmallows, tiny little marshmallows, you know, and then spooning it over the side. So that draws all these gulls. And the gulls come looking, and of course that brings in other birds as well. So shearwaters show up. Storm petrels show up. Northern Fulmar sitting on the water. This year we had a view of Northern Fulmar flying by, but that was about it. Lace and albatross show up. Black-footed albatross show up. And now you can no longer chum for birds. So that's changed the whole scenario there. It's just not nearly as good as it used to be. And one of the men on the boat that we were on this year was lamenting that. He was a local guy. And he said, well, the duplicity of it really stinks because fishermen are allowed to chum, but birders are not. So yeah, why would that be? I don't know. But boy, it sure did change the pelagic birding in Monterey Bay. Not nearly as good as it used to be. Did I identify that bird? Yeah, rhinoceros auklet. Guy's got a little bit of a tip here that makes him look a little rhinoceros-y. So a trip down the Coast Highway, just stunning scenery and some pretty decent birding. We'll take a look a minute here at the California birds, the cowbirds. So the California condor, can you see this bird perched on the rock right here? Okay. So we're standing across the road from this bird or from this cliff. And here's this bird perched. I don't know, so somebody spotted it. Well, we spooked it, so it took off. It flew right toward us, not away from us, and right over top of us. And you know what? It's number 12. And that's significant because at the time this happened, the ABA rules said that you could not count reintroduced birds, okay? So what we found out though was that number 12 was one of the original condors captured to start the reintroduction program. So this was, and always was, a wild bird. So we were able to count it. We were delighted. I have a funny story, Mark. Can I tell it? Yeah. So Marlene, who is not only a great birder, but she's my cousin. We're standing on the shore, not far from this, looking down at a bunch of birds on a beach. And it's a sea lion beach where the sea lions come up to give birth, right? And so that means there's a lot of afterbirth down there, and these condors come and feed on that. So we're looking down there, and I think I made the statement that just a bunch of turkey vultures or something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong. And just a bunch of turkey vultures down there. It's like 300 feet below you, you know? And Marlene says, What's that one with number 44 on its wing? So nobody is numbering turkey vultures. So it turned out that there was a condor down there on the beach with number 44 on its wing. So that was a funny story. So some other cowbirds, birds with California in their name: California quail, thrasher, towhee, California scrub jay. Now that is not the island scrub jay. This is a scrub jay of the mainland. This is the true endemic island scrub jay. And this is on Santa Cruz Island. It's kind of a weird pose. It's kind of looking back at us. It's in a eucalyptus tree. It's bigger, as you can see in this picture. It's bulkier. It's a prettier pattern, I think. It's brighter blue. So that's a contrast between the Western scrub jay, which is now the California scrub jay, and the island scrub jay. Here again, there's other splits. Like now there's a Woodhouse's scrub jay and there's a Florida scrub jay. So this bird, which was once considered one species, now it's, I think, at least 4. California gnatcatcher, very endangered little bird. And it's endangered because its habitat is endangered. So this is its home. That's what it likes. So why would a habitat like that be endangered? By the way, wren tits also show up in that same habitat, really nifty little wren-like bird. That's why it's endangered. This is high-priced real estate within sight of the coast that people are buying up like crazy. So now there's a moratorium on those sales, but it's got a lot of people upset. So we're going to end our little tour here with a quick trip through the desert. This is actually the Mojave Desert. Anybody know how we know that's the Mojave Desert? Perchance? I know, anybody know? There you go. The Joshua tree is a signature of the Mojave Desert. So when you see Joshua trees, you know that there's a lot of Mojave Desert influence. Just like when you see a lot of saguaros, you know that it's the Sonoran Desert that you're looking at. So this is in Southern California, Mojave Desert, driest desert in the United States. There are some richer places. This is one of them. This is not. The bush in front of you here is called creosote bush, and that bush will grow on pretty much 2 inches of rain a year. It's incredible. And interestingly, there is a bird that hangs out there. It's called the Costa thrasher. Right? Somehow it survives in that driest of dry. Costa's hummingbird come to the flowers out of that bush and other flowers. Fairly common bird in the area is called Ashy the flycatcher. This desert is not without some oases. This oasis here in Central California, the northern part of the Mojave Desert, believe it or not, those are cottonwood trees. And what do you know about cottonwood trees? They need a lot of water, right? So where's this water coming from? Well, geologically, I'm told that there's a spot here that underneath there that is impervious to water further percolating into the ground. So the water builds up below that spot. But it's a really nifty oasis that is fun to bird, especially in the springtime. Little bit of rain goes a long way in the desert, right? And as you can see here too, owl's clover and California poppies. And that's to whom I owe some picture credits. Okay, thank you. I'm happy to stand here for a few minutes and talk for any questions, any thoughts you'd like to share.
We have a microphone for questions, so.
So just raise your hand.